Horace Tully folded Martin Gannett's wage chit twice and slid it beneath his ledger, as if a dead man's pay could be buried under paper. "There's nothing left for you," he said. "3 sail hides missing. Salt account unpaid. Your husband died owing my yard." Rosalie stood across the narrow table with one gloved hand resting on June's shoulder. Coal smoke drifted in from the railroad yards, mixed with cattle dust and the sour mineral smell of curing hides. On the wall behind Tully hung a printed notice bordered in black. "Martin Gannett. 3 sail hides and 1 piece of company iron unicound for. No settlement until property is returned." Martin had been dead 5 months. His name was still being made to stand trial without him. "Write the account, Rosalie, each hide, each charge, each date." Tully leaned back. "A thief's widow is in no position to demand my books." "Then show me the page that proves the debt." "I don't owe you proof. You owe me Martin's wages unless you can itemize why you withheld them." His eyes hardened. "Press this, Mrs. Gannett, and I'll ask the sheriff to search every trunk you carried into Dodge." June's fingers tightened in Rosalie's skirt, 7 years old, tired from the train, hungry enough that the skin beneath her eyes had gone grey. She did not complain. That made the room feel crueler. Rosalie kept her voice level. "Give me the wage chit. It belongs with the account. The account you refuse to show." Tully glanced at the notice on the wall, then drew the folded paper from beneath the ledger. He believed the crossed-out amount had made it worthless. He dropped it onto the table. Rosalie picked it up and slipped it inside her glove. 12 cents rested against her palm. Enough for food or a bed, not both. Tully opened his ledger again. "You've had your answer." Rosalie turned June toward the door. The child stopped after 2 steps. At a table near the window, a cowboy sat beside a rolled calf hide. He was broad through the shoulders, sun-browned, and dressed like a working man rather than an owner. One cuff had been mended with darker thread. A patch showed near the side of his boot. His hat rested on the empty chair beside him. Before him sat a scratched blue enamel plate filled with beef, potatoes, and gravy. June stared at it, not rudely, not hopefully. She simply could not make herself look away. Rosalie bent near her ear. "Let's go," she whispered. "We can't pay." "What is your opinion worth?" the cowboy asked. Rosalie straightened. Tully gave a short laugh. "Nathan Rourke, don't waste your money. Martin taught her how to lie over leather." Nathan did not look at Tully. His attention remained on Rosalie. "You know hides?" "I graded them beside Martin for 9 years. That wasn't my question." Rosalie studied him. Men often offered kindness first and named the price later, after refusal had become impolite. 10 cents, she said, for 1 opinion. The meal is the fee, nothing beyond it. Nathan reached into his coat and placed a dime on the table for the eating room keeper. Agreed. He slid the blue plate toward June, then stopped it halfway between them. His fingers stayed on the rim. June looked at Rosalie. Nathan did not urge the child forward. "Your mother earned this," he said. "She decides." Rosalie placed 2 fingers against the opposite edge and drew the plate the rest of the way. Their hands did not touch. "Eat slowly," she told June. June sat. She cut 1 potato with the side of her fork and took a careful bite, as if eating too quickly might cause the permission to vanish. Nathan lifted the rolled hide onto the table, but left it tied until Rosalie removed her gloves. She set them beside the folded wage chit. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "Stone Ladder Ranch, calf found north of the place. Tully's hunters called it wolf loss." "Were you there when it was found?" No. "When it was skinned?" "No." "Then tell me only what you know." Nathan's mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile. I hauled it into Dodge this morning. He untied the rawhide cord and spread the calf hide beneath the window light. The shoulder edge had been torn and stiffened with salt. Rosalie leaned close without touching. 7 punctures curved through the damaged area. 6 sat at nearly even intervals. The 7th turned inward. "How many?" Nathan asked. 7. Tully did not look up. Wolf teeth. Rosalie turned the hide just enough to see the flesh side. Beneath the rough tearing lay a narrow, smooth opening, cleaner than the damage around it. "The skinning cut is lower," she said. Nathan moved nearer, but left room for her shoulders. Then what made that? A blade began the opening before the later tearing widened it. Tully shut the ledger. Salt stiffens every edge until women see conspiracy in leather. Rosalie touched the air above the opening, not the hide itself. Salt entered this line while it was still open. The cut existed before the outer edge dried. Scavengers. They may have made some of the later tearing. She indicated the ragged fibers. They did not begin a smooth line beneath it. Nathan looked from the cut to the 7 marks. "Can you say what made those? Not from one hide. A trap? Possible. A tool? Possible. Tully's? Not proved." Tully spread both hands. "There. 10 cents bought you nothing." Rosalie replaced her gloves. 10 cents bought the difference between what I see and what I can prove. Nathan rested one hand beside the hide. "Can you say wolves killed this calf? No. Can you say wolves did not feed on it later? No. Can you say the marks are natural?" Rosalie studied the regular arc and the inward 7th point. "Not honestly." June ate half the beef and most of the potatoes. Color had begun to return to her face. Nathan glanced at the plate only once, then back to Rosalie. No pride, no expectation. "I work for Reuben Keating at Stone Ladder," he said. "I'm a drover, not the owner. If there are other hides, I can ask him to have them examined." "You cannot hire me for him?" "No." The answer came without offense. "I can tell him what you found." Tully rose. "You'll tell Keating a hungry widow invented an iron beast because she wants wages." Rosalie took Martin's chit from beside her gloves and pressed it back into her palm. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want the written account for Martin's pay. Tomorrow you'll learn what happens when a woman mistakes noise for standing." Rosalie turned toward him. "Put that in writing too." June set down her fork. Nathan began rolling the hide, but Tully's voice stopped him. "That woman's husband stole from my yard." Rosalie looked past him at Martin's printed name on the wall. "Then you should have no trouble proving it." Nathan tied the hide closed. His gaze went once to the notice, then to the 7 marks disappearing beneath the roll. One question had been answered. Rosalie knew what the hide did not prove. The larger one had only begun. Who had made a wolf count to 7? Nathan kept the rolled hide on the table after Tully turned back to his ledger. "You said salt stiffened the edge," he said. Tully did not look up. "It does." "Then show me how salt begins a smooth cut beneath tearing." Tully's pen stopped. Rosalie drew one glove halfway off again. She did not reopen the hide. "The salt is inside the narrow line," she said. "That means the line was open before the outer surface dried. It does not tell us who opened it." "And the rough damage?" Nathan asked. "Scavengers may have widened it later." Tully glanced toward the eating room keeper, who had already taken Nathan's dime. "You paid for an opinion. You got one." "I paid for what she could support," Nathan said. "You keep answering claims she did not make." Rosalie pulled her glove back into place. "We are finished here." "Not if Reuben Keating has 3 more hides," Nathan said. "You cannot hire me for him." "No," he answered without hesitation. "I lead drovers. Reuben owns Stone Ladder, and signs the ranch accounts. The distinction mattered. A man pretending to authority he did not possess would have been easy to dismiss. Nathan lifted his pocketbook from inside his coat. There is a ranch hand outside carrying freight receipts north. I can send a note. Rosalie looked through the doorway. A young rider waited beside two saddled horses, one already lathered from the morning road. Before you write, I set the terms. Nathan turned to a clean page. Tell me. 2 full working days at a fixed wage. His pencil moved. Payment whether my conclusion saves stone ladder money, costs it money, or proves nothing. He wrote that too. June remains with me. We have a separate room with a working door, not the bunkhouse. Understood. Meals do not reduce wages. No cooking, washing, mending, or house service is owed against them. I may leave when the 2 days end, even if Mr. Keating wants more work. Stone Ladder provides return transport to Dodge. Nathan read each term aloud before adding the next. He did not soften her language. Anything else, 1 night at Mrs. Bell's, if she has room, paid as ranch travel expense, not as a personal favor from you. The eating room keeper nodded toward the north end of town. Mrs. Bell takes women and children, clean rooms, locks that work. Tully gave her a look that made the woman turn away, but she did not withdraw the recommendation. Nathan added the lodging term. Beneath it, he wrote a short account of Rosalie's findings. 7 pressure marks, the 7th angled inward, a smooth opening beneath later tearing, and no conclusion naming a maker or culprit. He signed his own position beneath the request. Nathan Rourke, lead drover, requesting owner authorization. Read it, he said. Rosalie took the page. Their fingertips touched along the lower edge. His skin was warm and rough from rains. Nathan released the paper at once. No tightening of his hand. No attempt to turn accident into invitation. She read every line twice. You did not write that wolves did not kill it. You did not say that. You did not write that Tully's men made the marks. You did not say that either. Rosalie returned the page. Send it. The ranch hand mounted and took the north road at a hard but measured pace. Tully watched from beneath Martin's printed notice. Keating will not pay a hungry widow to tell him cattle die. Rosalie met his gaze. Then he can refuse in writing. She bought a small loaf from the keeper for 4 cents and divided it with June on a bench near the depot. 8 cents remained inside her glove. Nathan waited across the platform, far enough to leave them their meal. He repaired a split strap on his camp roll while freight wagons rattled past and cattle bawled beyond the pens. When June finished her half of the bread, she glanced toward the blue enamel plate Nathan had carried outside. At the pump behind the eating room, he washed it, wiped it with a clean corner of canvas, and wrapped it inside the roll. It belongs to him again, June said. It always did, Rosalie answered. Using a thing does not make it ours. Nathan heard. He did not join the lesson or claim credit for it. Before the October light failed, the stone ladder rider returned on a fresh horse. Dust darkened his coat. He carried Reuben Keating's answer, folded around a $1 note for Mrs. Bell's lodging. Rosalie did not touch the money until she had read the authorization. Reuben had initialed every condition. The wage was stated in figures and words. June's presence, the separate room, meals, return transport, 2-day limit, and freedom from household labor were all accepted. Beneath them, Reuben had written, payment stands whether Mrs. Gannett finds fraud, natural loss, or no sound conclusion. The $1 goes directly to Mrs. Bell, Rosalie said. Nathan nodded. I will give you her address. We can find the house. Yes. He wrote it on the back of a freight receipt and handed it to her without offering escort. Mrs. Bell's place stood 2 streets from the stock pens, away from the loudest saloons. The widow who opened the door wore a dark dress with her sleeves rolled and a ring of keys at her waist. She read Reuben's authorization, took the $1 as business payment, and showed Rosalie a small upstairs room with 1 bed, 1 washstand, and a lock that turned cleanly. Nathan carried the carpet bag only to the foot of the stairs. "The wagon leaves after breakfast," he said. "You may change your mind before then, I know." He touched the brim of his hat and left for the wagon yard. On the morning of October 10th, Rosalie and June found the stone ladder wagon waiting outside Mrs. Bell's. The rolled calf hide lay secured beneath the driver's bench. Nathan's camp roll, with the blue plate inside, was tied behind him. The road north crossed dry Kansas grass under a cold wind. Loaded with supplies, the wagon took nearly 4 hours. June sat wrapped in a blanket against Rosalie's side and watched larks rise ahead of the horses. After several miles, she said, "Papa used to count marks." Rosalie turned toward her. "On hides." June nodded. "He said wolves don't count the same every time." Nathan kept his attention on the road. "Did he say what did?" June frowned, reaching for a memory already worn thin by grief. Rosalie covered the child's hand. "You do not have to remember more." June's shoulders eased. "Only that." "Then that is enough," Rosalie said. Near midday, a lone rider appeared on a southern rise. He stayed far behind and never tried to close the distance. Nathan saw him in the small wagon mirror fixed near the brake lever. "Tully's man." "Why let him follow?" Rosalie asked. "Because turning back would tell him fear decides our road." The rider remained until the roofs of Stone Ladder came into view. Then he wheeled south toward Dodge City. They reached the ranch late in the afternoon. Reuben Keating met them in the yard, gray-bearded and broad through the shoulders, his work coat marked with chaff. He read the authorization in Rosalie's hand before offering welcome. "My sister has your room ready. The hide shed stays locked until daylight." Nathan untied his camp roll, removed the blue enamel plate, and placed it on a shelf beside his other gear. Then he carried the Dodge calf hide into the shed while Reuben held the door. 3 preserved hides hung along the north wall. Fading light crossed their damaged shoulders. On the first, 7 dark points curved through the leather. On the second, the last mark bent inward. On the third, ragged tearing crossed an older arc. Rosalie stopped at the threshold. She did not step inside. She did not touch anything. "Lock it," she said. Reuben closed the door. Nathan turned the key and held it out. Rosalie shook her head. "You keep it. Tomorrow, everyone sees what was where before I begin." Nathan closed his fist around the key. Behind the locked door waited 3 hides and a question larger than the first. Not whether one wolf had counted to 7, but how the same impossible count had reached Stone Ladder again and again. At first light on October 11th, Reuben brought Rosalie, Nathan, and Silas to the hide shed before any ranch hand entered. Frost silvered the lower rails, and the cold made the key click against Nathan's fingers. June remained at the ranch house with Reuben's sister, eating oatmeal beside the stove. Rosalie waited until Reuben named everyone present. Then Nathan opened the door. The 3 preserved hides hung where she had seen them in the fading light. The Dodge calf hide remained rolled on the lower shelf. Nathan's scratched blue enamel plate sat intact on the gear shelf beside his camp roll. Nothing had been moved. "Before we touch anything," Rosalie said, "I need paper, charcoal, string, a wooden rule, and every record that came with these hides." Reuben brought a small office box from the rear corner. Inside were bounty tags, freight slips, salt accounts, and brief notes written by several hands. "The records aren't complete," he said. "Then the missing parts stay missing," Rosalie replied. "No one fills them with memory, because an empty space makes him uncomfortable." Silas found a roll of twine and sharpened a charcoal stick with his pocket knife. Rosalie cut 3 paper labels and marked them A, B, and C. She tied each label through an existing edge hole so no new mark entered the leather. Beneath every hide, she placed a handling sheet. "Write what you witnessed," she told Silas. "If someone told you a thing, write that it was told. Those are not equal. You expect these papers to matter later?" Reuben asked. "I expect every man who dislikes my conclusion to begin with the handling." Nathan brought hide A down with Silas while Rosalie watched where their hands touched. The shoulder damage had dried dark beneath the salt. 7 pressure marks curved through the leather. 6 followed, nearly even intervals. The 7th turned inward. Rosalie laid paper over the flesh side and rubbed charcoal lightly along the raised edge, then measured the spacing with string. She marked the string at each point and tied it to the handling sheet. "That makes a pattern," Nathan said. "It records one," Rosalie corrected. "A pattern requires repetition." Hide B had been stretched harder during curing. The marks appeared flatter from the hair side, but the flesh side preserved enough depth to follow. Rosalie aligned the wooden rule beneath the 1st and 4th points, then compared the marked string from hide A. The distances had shifted slightly with drying. The order had not. 7 marks, the final one angled inward. She made a second charcoal template. Reuben leaned closer. "That is repetition. 2 hides with a similar rigid arrangement," Rosalie said. "Do not make me spend time cutting your conclusion back to size." Silas lowered his head over the sheet, hiding the beginning of a smile. Hide C hung from a warped crosspiece near the rear wall. Nathan lifted one side while Silas worked the peg loose. The dry wood gave a sharp complaint. Rosalie stepped back, but the rack tipped toward her faster than expected. Nathan caught her elbow through her sleeve. Steady. His grip was firm and no higher than needed. Rosalie found her footing. "Yes." He released her before the answer had fully left her mouth. The rack settled against the wall. No one made a joke of the contact. Nathan and Silas carried hide C to the table, broad, tearing across the shoulder, irregular and rough. At first glance, it offered the strongest argument for a feeding animal. Rosalie turned the edge toward the light. Beneath the tearing, older pressure points remained. Some had widened, others were partly crossed. The first 6 followed the same curve. The 7th turned inward. Rosalie made a 3rd charcoal rubbing and laid the marked strings side by side. The intervals were not perfect copies, because curing had tightened each hide differently. The sequence remained. 6 around the arc, 1 turned in. "Scavengers could make the outer tearing," Nathan said. "Yes, could they place the older marks beneath it?" "Not in the same arrangement across 3 separate animals." Reuben folded his arms. "Then someone used a tool. A rigid device is the strongest explanation. An iron jaw, possible. Tullies?" Rosalie looked at him. "Not proved." Reuben exhaled through his nose. "What do these hides prove?" Rosalie placed the 3 paper templates in a row. That 3 animals carried the same 7-point arrangement. That the 7th point turned inward each time. That later feeding can cross older damage. They do not identify the maker, owner, or user of whatever caused the first marks. Nathan nodded toward the rolled hide on the lower shelf. "And the Dodge calf? Record it separately." He brought it to the table. Rosalie tied on a label reading Dodge Colf, October 9. She did not call it D. Why not add it to the set? Silas asked. Because it came through Tully's yard and reached us by a different path. Separate source. Separate record. Nathan wrote his own name as the man who hauled it into Dodge and again as the man who carried it to Stone Ladder under Reuben's authorization. Rosalie watched him write both entries. He did not omit himself from the chain because omission would look cleaner. By mid-morning, the 4 hides had handling sheets, labels, templates, and marked strings. Gaps remained in the older records. One hide had no finder named. Another listed only Tully's initials beside the amount paid. Rosalie marked each absence rather than solving it by guess. What do we do next? Reuben asked. Separate every hide tied to a wolf payment from ordinary sale stock. Stop the next private bounty payment. Preserve any fresh carcass before skinning. Record location, finder, time found, and every person who touches it. Tully may withdraw his hunters. He may. If calves die while we wait, then you lose calves honestly instead of paying a man who profits when you are afraid. Reuben's face tightened, but he did not turn away. Nathan had already taken the shed key from the table. I'll move every wolf loss hide here, he said. Silas can take first north watch. Cal Porter goes with him. Ben Ames shifts east before dark. I'll write the fresh carcass order and post it in the bunkhouse and barn. He looked to Reuben. With your permission? Reuben nodded. Do it. Nathan did not ask Rosalie to repeat the instructions. He turned them into work while she gathered the charcoal papers. Before noon, the wolf loss hides were locked apart from sale stock. Nathan posted a written order. No cutting, salting, turning or dragging of a fresh carcass until the finder, place, and first handlers had been recorded. A rider from Tully arrived near sunset and refused to dismount. Mr. Tully says his hunters won't ride a range that withholds contracted payment. Reuben stood at the gate with Rosalie and Nathan. Tell him payment is suspended pending examination. He says a widow's examination doesn't change a wolf bite. Rosalie did not answer the insult. Ask Mr. Tully whether he wants the existing hides preserved. The rider looked at her. Why? A man certain of his claims should prefer the evidence to remain whole. He turned his horse south. He'll hear what you said. That was the purpose. At supper, resentment moved through the mess room faster than the stew. Extra watches meant lost sleep. One hand asked whether Rosalie intended to grade tracks next. Another said women saw patterns when men paid them to. Rosalie let the remarks pass until Reuben asked her to explain the new order. You do not have to believe me, she said. You have to leave the next carcass unchanged long enough for the damage to be seen before. Knife, salt, wagon, and weather alter it. Silas sat halfway down the table, turning his spoon between his fingers. I saw something last spring. Reuben faced him. Where? North Draw. 2 of Tully's men had canvas wrapped around black iron. I thought it was a broken trap. Nathan stopped lifting his cup. Rosalie saw the color leave his face. What shape? She asked. Silas curved both hands toward each other, like an animal's mouth. Did you see the teeth? One side. Not long. His brow tightened as he searched the memory. One tooth turned inward, looked bent wrong. Rosalie kept her voice steady. Would a blacksmith remember a defect like that? Any smith worth paying would. A bent tooth changes how the jaws meet. Reuben turned toward Nathan. You recognize that description? Nathan set his cup down without drinking. I recognize enough to be afraid of saying the wrong thing. Rosalie looked at the 3 charcoal templates lying beside the handling sheets. Each ended with the same inward mark. A rigid jaw could explain the hides. A blacksmith might explain the tooth. Nathan's face suggested the harder question was not whether such a thing existed. It was why he had already known to fear it. Nathan did not answer Reuben's question before hoofbeats struck the yard. A Northwatch rider came through the gate with frost whitening his horse's mane. "Dead calf in the drawer," he said. "Found less than an hour ago. No one skinned it." Nathan set down his cup. The color had not returned to his face. Rosalie turned to the rider. "Who touched it?" Cal Porter checked for breath. The other watchman stayed back. "Did either man turn it?" "No." "Ma'am." "Cut it?" "No." "Drag it?" "No." Reuben rose. How Long shook his head. "I couldn't say." "Good," Rosalie said. He frowned. "Good. Good that you did not invent an answer." She faced Reuben. "No lanterns near the body tonight. No one walks through the ground around it unless necessary. Put 2 watchers where they can see anyone approach without disturbing the carcass." Reuben nodded to Silas. "See to it." Silas left at once. Nathan remained beside the table. The unanswered question between him and Rosalie had not gone away. It had only been forced to wait. "We ride before sunrise," she said. "June stays here." Reuben's sister agreed from the kitchen doorway. June stood beside her in a borrowed nightdress, hair loose over her shoulders. "Will there be wolves?" she asked. Rosalie crouched. "There may have been animals. That is not the same as saying wolves killed it." June accepted the difference because her mother had made it plain. Nathan looked toward the barn. "I'll choose your horse. Choose one that forgives a rider who has spent more years beside hides than cattle. Not an unskilled rider," he said. "An out-of-practice one." It was not flattery. That made the offer easier to accept. Before dawn on October 12th, the cold came hard from the northwest. Nathan brought a steady sorrel mare to the mounting block. He had already checked the tack, but Rosalie tested the cinch herself. "She follows the horse ahead when she is uncertain," he said. "Do not let her choose your pace. And if she shies, give her somewhere clear to move. Do not pull both reins against her mouth." Rosalie put one boot in the stirrup. Nathan did not touch her until she asked him to steady her forearm. The contact ended as soon as she settled in the saddle. Reuben and Silas rode with them. The north draw lay beyond a long fold of pale grass, more than an hour from the ranch buildings. Nathan kept the pace measured over frozen ruts and let Rosalie's mare travel within sight of his bay. He did not ask whether she was afraid. He watched the sorrel's ears. 2 ranch hands waited above the draw. The calf lay below them near a strip of bare ground, one foreleg folded beneath its body. No knife had touched the hide. No bounty tag hung from it. Rosalie dismounted and pulled on her gloves. "Who found it first?" "Cal," one hand said. "At first light." "Who approached after him?" "Me, then Silas." "Did anyone roll it?" "No." Rosalie walked a full circle before kneeling. Dust had settled inside one nostril. The body had stiffened, but the night cold complicated any estimate. She touched the ground near the flank, then the exposed ear. It died before it was found. Cal shifted. "I said I found it at first light. I am separating discovery from death. I am not accusing you." Reuben crouched near the hind legs. "Can you tell how many hours?" "Not with enough certainty to write it." She pointed to the lower leg trapped beneath the body. "It likely lay in this position through part of the night. That is as far as I will go." Broad tearing marked the left shoulder. Some edges had dried dark. Others looked more recently disturbed. Small tracks crossed the dirt near the belly. Coarse hair clung to a thorn. "Animals fed here," Silas said. "Yes." Reuben's mouth tightened. Then Tully was right. About later feeding, perhaps. Rosalie used the blunt end of a wooden rule to raise one loose flap. Beneath the irregular tearing sat a curved line of deeper pressure marks. 6 followed a measured arc. The 7th turned inward. No curing had flattened them. No salt had stiffened the edges. The same wrong count was present on the carcass. Nathan moved closer, but stopped outside her working space. The same as A, B, and C. The same kind of arrangement. And the tearing crosses some of the pressure points. Rosalie lowered the flap. Whatever fed here widened older damage. It did not place 7 marks at regular intervals. Reuben stared at the shoulder, the iron mouth. A rigid jaw remains the strongest explanation. Can you say it killed the calf? No. She checked the neck, legs, belly, and ground. The animal may have died from another cause and been marked afterward. It may have been injured before death. This hide does not answer that. Silas moved west along the draw. Wagon ruts. Nathan joined him without crossing the ground near the carcass. One track held a sharper edge than the others. New? Reuben asked. Newer than some, Silas said. Could be yesterday. Could belong to any ranch wagon using the North Road. Rosalie rose. Record it. Do not name an owner. Reuben gave her a hard look. You make victory difficult. I make contradiction more difficult. Nathan's approval showed briefly, then disappeared as he looked back at the marks. Rosalie returned to the carcass. Before anyone skins it, Silas writes the date, place, first finder, every person present, and the order of handling. The left shoulder comes free first. No cut passes through those marks. Silas opened his notebook. Label it D. No A, B, and C are preserved comparison hides. This one has too much later damage for exact alignment after curing. She pointed to his page. Call it North Draw Hide. Keep the handling record with it. Store it apart from the others. Will it help? Reuben asked. It supports the order of damage. It does not promise a perfect match once the torn edge dries. You are leaving yourself less proof. I am leaving the proof its proper size. Cal and the other hand began only after Silas read back every name and instruction. Rosalie watched the first cut start, well below the damaged shoulder. The hide came free, without a blade crossing the 7 marks. It would be cured separately and locked apart from A, B, and C. The ride back began against a stronger wind. Halfway to the ranch, an old strip of dried hide tore loose from a thorn bush and snapped across the road. The sorrel jumped sideways. Rosalie's right foot slipped against the stirrup. Instinct sent her hand toward the nearest solid thing. She caught Nathan's coat sleeve above the wrist. He brought his bay alongside, but did not seize her reins. Let her move 1 step, he said. The mare's shoulder trembled beneath Rosalie. Open your left hand. Give her the road. Rosalie held Nathan's sleeve while the sorrel found space. He did not cover her fingers or pull her toward him. His arm stayed steady because she had chosen it. Sit deep, he said. That's it. The mare settled. Rosalie released him on her own. The dark wool held the shape of her grip for an instant. Borrowed balance, she said. You kept the seat. Barely. Barely still keeps a rider out of the dirt. He turned his horse forward and let her decide when to follow. At Stone Ladder's gate, a broadside had been nailed across the post. Reuben tore it free. Horace Tully's name stood in heavy type beneath a warning to Ford County cattle owners. The notice claimed Stone Ladder had obstructed contracted hunters, relied on an untrained widow, and endangered neighboring stock by withholding payment for proven wolf losses. Near the bottom, one sentence tied her judgment to the old accusation against Martin. The wife of a man who had left 3 sale hides and company iron unaccounted for could not be trusted to judge claims involving Tully's yard. Reuben read it twice. This was printed before he could know what we found today. Then it is not an answer to evidence, Rosalie said. It is pressure prepared in advance. The final lines threatened any owner who allowed Rosalie to inspect a loss with loss of Tully's hunters and hide yard services. Nathan read over Reuben's shoulder. His face went pale again. Not at the insult, at the words Company Iron. Rosalie folded the broadside along its center. The North Draw hide stays separate. No payment leaves this ranch. Agreed, Reuben said. She turned to Nathan. The wind pulled at the sleeve she had gripped on the road. Silas described an iron mouth, and you looked as though you knew it. Today we found its pattern beneath real feeding damage, and you went pale at a notice about Company Iron. Nathan held her gaze. I have heard enough to be afraid of saying the wrong thing. That is not the same as having seen nothing. His jaw tightened. Rosalie stepped closer, not enough to touch him. Why did that description frighten you? Nathan, answered Rosalie the next morning by bringing witnesses. Amos Pike arrived first, a lean cattleman with frost still caught in his beard. Edwin Marsh came behind him in a mud-splashed coat, carrying the account book for his brother-in-law's herd. Horace Tully rode in last with 2 hired men, but Reuben stopped the riders at the gate. Only Tully enters the shed. Afraid of witnesses? Tully asked. I already invited mine, Reuben said. Inside, Rosalie checked the labels before anyone approached the table. Hides A, B, and C's still hung beneath their original tags. The charcoal templates, marked strings, and handling sheets remained in the locked box. The North Draw hide rested in the separate curing room with Silas's record tied beside it. Nathan's scratched blue enamel plate sat intact on the gear shelf. Before we begin, Rosalie said, the North Draw hide is not part of an exact comparison. Later feeding tore too much of the original edge. Pike looked toward the second door. Then why keep it? Because it supports the order of damage, not the spacing. Tully leaned against the frame. Convenient. You remove the hide that does not fit. Rosalie met his gaze. I remove it from a conclusion it cannot support. Reuben unlocked the curing room long enough for Pike and Marsh to see the separate label and handling sheet. No one touched the hide. Then he closed and locked the door again. Show us what can support a conclusion, Marsh said. Rosalie began with hide A. She placed its paper template beside the shoulder and used the marked string to show the 7-point arc. Hide C came next, broad scavenger, tearing crossed older pressure marks without erasing their order. She did not repeat every explanation from the prior 2 days. The men could see the repeated inward 7th point. Tully waited until Pike bent closer. How many hands touched these before she arrived, he asked. Rosalie pointed to the handling sheets. Every known handler is listed, and the unknown ones, marked unknown. So you admit contamination. I admit incomplete records, which makes the hides worthless. It makes the conclusion narrower. Tully turned to Pike and Marsh. This is what you are paying for. A widow says nothing firmly enough to be proved wrong. Pike closed his account book halfway. 5 claims remain unpaid between my place, Marsh's, and 2 smaller outfits. If the hides do not hold, neither does the money. Tully's face tightened. Marsh added, winter hunting and handling contracts are reviewed on the 20th. No fresh proof by then, no renewal from us. The deadline entered the shed like another witness. Tully pushed away from the doorframe. You pull hunters now, you'll lose calves before winter. Then give us sound claims, Pike said. Rosalie turned toward hide B. This one must be read from the flesh side. Nathan lifted it down and placed it across the table, stopping where she had instructed. The cured leather resisted when Rosalie turned it. I need something shallow under the lower edge. Reuben reached for a wooden tray, but Rosalie saw the blue plate on the shelf. May I use that? Nathan followed her gaze. Yes. He lifted the plate and set it into her hands. Rosalie slid it beneath hide B. When she turned the leather flesh side upward, loose salt, coarse hair, and dried grit fell into the enamel. The outside had looked confused. The inside did not. 7 darker pressure bruises sat above a smooth opening line. Beyond that line, the fibers had torn irregularly. Rosalie pointed in order. The rigid pressure came first. A blade began the opening below it. Later tearing widened what was already there. Marsh counted the bruises. 7. Yes. Pike studied the lower line. That cut was made while the hide was still on the animal. The pressure marks were. The blade opening began before the later tearing. The leather cannot name the hand. Tully stepped nearer. You can turn any hide inside out and tell a story. Then tell us which part is false. The handling, the curing, the claim that any of this came through my hunters. I have not said your hunters made it. You brought cattlemen here to think it. Reuben brought them. Your records brought the doubt. Tully reached toward hide B. Nathan moved between him and the table. He did not lift his fists. He simply occupied the space. Move, Tully said. Mrs. Gannett is not finished. That hide passed through my yard. Reuben answered before Nathan could. It belongs to Stone Ladder. Stone Ladder hired me to protect its stock, not to take back evidence. Tully tried to reach around Nathan. Nathan caught his wrist long enough to stop the grab, then released it. Do not touch the hide. Tully pulled free and struck the table with the heel of his hand. Hide B shifted. The enamel plate slid from beneath the leather, hit the packed floor, and struck a flat stone near the wall. A white chip broke from the rim. The sound was small. Rosalie felt it anyway. June's careful first bite rose in her memory, along with Nathan stopping the plate halfway so a hungry child's mother could still decide. Rosalie bent and picked it up. Salt and hair remained inside. The enamel had split away along one edge, exposing pale metal beneath. She set it upright on the shelf. The chip changes the plate, she said. It does not change what the plate already held. Marsh stared at Tully. You knocked down the thing catching the material. It is dirt. Then why stop her? Pike asked. Tully's restraint gave way. Because she is building a fraud on a dead man's theft. Rosalie placed both hands on the table. Which theft? Martin carried the iron jaw out of my yard. Every man in the shed went still. Rosalie kept her voice even. Who saw him? Men who worked for me. Names? You don't command my books. You named my husband before witnesses. Name the men. Tully's jaw tightened. One left Kansas. When? Soon after. Before or after Martin died? Tully hesitated. Only a breath, but Pike saw it. So did Marsh. Did you report the jaw stolen to the sheriff? Rosalie asked. Martin said he would return it. A man you now call a thief promised to return the evidence of his theft, and you accepted that. He had blood on him. One of my men was hurt. Whose blood? Ask Rourke. Nathan's face went still. Ask him what he saw behind my hide yard 2 days before Martin died. Tully moved toward Rosalie. Nathan stepped with him. One hand settled at the upper middle of Rosalie's back, while his body closed the space. The touch was firm, limited, and warm through her dress. Rosalie accepted one breath of steadiness. Then she stepped aside. Nathan's hand fell at once. Reuben pointed toward the door. Your payment remains suspended. Leave. Then my hunters remain withdrawn. So be it. Tully looked at Pike and Marsh. If you let her interfere, you lose the men who keep your calves alive. Pike's voice came dry. 5 claims are waiting on proof. Bring proof. Tully faced Rosalie. You arrived in Dodge, unable to buy supper. Now you expect cattlemen to finance your grief. My hunger does not alter your hides. No, he said. But your husband did. He left the shed. Pike and Marsh remained. Pike agreed to preserve every stored predator loss hide and withhold the 5 disputed payments until independent examination. Marsh agreed that no winter contract would be renewed before the 20th without fresh evidence. Neither man called Tully guilty. They simply stopped buying certainty. Reuben relocked A, B, and C. The north drawer hide stayed in its separate room. Later, Rosalie rinsed the chipped plate in the small washroom off the kitchen. Water carried salt and grit into the basin. The plate still held. Nathan waited in the doorway without entering. When did you see Martin with the jaw? She asked. 5 months ago. 2 days before he died? Yes. Where? Behind Tully's yard near the horse lane. Was there blood? On Martin's sleeve. Some on the canvas. Whose? I don't know. Did Martin ask you for help? Nathan's answer came hard. Yes, Rosalie set the plate on a folded cloth. Did you give it? Not the help he asked for. The room seemed to narrow around the words. Tomorrow, Nathan said, I'll take you to Abel Fry, who worked Tully's yard, and Eli at the horse pens. Afterward, I'll tell you everything before Reuben, in order, no fragments. Rosalie held his gaze. Tomorrow, no later, no later. Reuben's sister entered the passage and handed Rosalie a slip bearing Mrs. Bell's address. She keeps the same room when she can. Rosalie folded the paper into her glove. We leave at dawn. Nathan reached for the plate only after she stepped back. He lifted it by the unbroken side and wrapped it in canvas. The chip remained visible until the cloth closed over it. At dawn, he said. Before dawn on October 14th, Nathan wrapped the chipped blue enamel plate in canvas and slid it into his camp roll. Rosalie watched him fasten the roll behind the stone ladder wagon. Then counted the wages. Reuben had already paid her. Enough for lodging, meals, and the return road without borrowing from Nathan. She put the coins inside her glove. June climbed onto the rear bench with a blanket around her shoulders. Will we see the men who knew Papa? She asked. We may see 2 people who remember him, Rosalie said. Remembering is not the same as telling the truth. Nathan took the driver's seat, and telling part is not the same as telling all. Rosalie met his gaze. You have until we return? I know. The wagon reached Dodge City before noon, Mrs. Bell opened the same upstairs room Rosalie and June had used 4 nights earlier. Rosalie paid for 1 night, supper, and June's care during the interviews. Mrs. Bell entered each charge in her book before taking the coins. Nathan carried the carpetbag only to the foot of the stairs. I'll leave the wagon at the livery and take a bunk in the yard, he said. Your camp roll? Rosalie asked. With me. The chipped plate remained inside it. Nothing of his entered her room. Abel Fry first, Nathan said. He works behind the cooper's shop. You do not answer for him. No. Abel knew Martin's name before Nathan finished speaking it. The former skinner stood beside a barrel hoop he had been heating, his missing fingertip pressed against the hammer handle. I don't work for Tully anymore. That is why we came, Rosalie said. Abel's gaze moved from her black dress to Nathan. I don't testify. No court has called you. Words travel farther than summons. Then speak only of work your own hands performed. Abel glanced toward the cooper's open doorway. I have nothing. Rosalie turned to Nathan. Wait outside. He stepped beyond the shed without protest. He remained visible across the yard, but far enough that Abel no longer had to speak beneath his attention. Rosalie waited until Nathan stopped. Did carcasses arrive at Tully's yard with the shoulder already opened? Abel rubbed the shortened finger against his palm. Some fresh, some, and the others stiff. Did you make the first cut? No. Who told you to finish them? Tully paid the work. That was not my question. Abel's mouth tightened. He told us every mark was wolf damage, said hunters had done their part and skinners should do ours. Did Martin object? Often. To what? To carcasses coming in after death with shoulders already worked. To men being paid before any ranch hand saw the animal. To the count. Rosalie held her hands still. What count? Marks. Said they came 2 even. Did you see the iron jaw? Abel looked toward the street. No, too fast. Rosalie did not accuse him of lying. Did you see Martin leave carrying something wrapped in canvas? Abel's jaw worked once. Heavy bundle. Black iron showed where the cloth had torn. Was there blood? On Martin's sleeve. Maybe on the canvas. Whose? I don't know. Did Tully report a stolen tool to the sheriff? Not while I was there. Would you repeat this before Reuben Keating? No. Before Amos Pike? No. Then I will not tell them you promised. Surprise crossed Abel's face. He turned back toward the hoop. Rosalie reached the doorway. Behind her, he said, Tully doesn't need to own a man to make hunger answer for him. Rosalie stopped. I know. Nathan joined her only after they reached the street. What did he give you? Some carcasses arrived stiff and already opened. Martin objected. Abel saw the canvas bundle. He will not testify. Nathan accepted the limit. Then Eli. They found the stable boy near the horse pens, sweeping straw from beneath a rail. Eli was perhaps 15, long-limbed and watchful around every mounted man who passed. He remembered Martin at once. He came through angry, the boy said. 2 days before he died? Rosalie asked. I think so. A cattle train loaded that evening. I remember the whistle. What did he say? Eli glanced toward Nathan. He said an ironmouth isn't a wolf. Said Mr. Tully was making fear and charging ranchers to stop it. Nathan did not move. Rosalie asked, Did Martin carry anything? Canvas around something black. Heavy enough he held it with both arms. Where did he go? Behind the horse lane, toward the old feed drain. Did you see him hide it? No, ma'am. Did anyone search there later? Eli's broom stopped. After the accident, 2 of Tully's men came before sunrise. 2 mornings in a row. What did they do? Went down by the old culvert where feed water used to run. Second morning, they came back carrying canvas between them. Nathan's face tightened. Did you see what was inside? No, only that it was heavy. Rosalie felt the path of the missing object become narrower. Martin had carried the jaw toward the culvert. Tully's men had searched there after his death and left with a burden wrapped in canvas. Not proof of what they recovered. Enough to ask the next question. Did Martin speak to Nathan? She asked. Eli nodded. Behind the horse yard. What did he say? I wasn't close enough for all of it. Did Nathan leave with him? No. A rider wearing one of Tully's dark neckerchiefs slowed near the pens. His attention moved from Eli to Nathan, then to Rosalie. He continued without entering the aisle. Nathan watched him go. Tully will know before supper. Good, Rosalie said. Let him wonder which part we learned. Eli lowered his voice. Martin told somebody to fetch the sheriff. I heard that much. Rosalie turned toward Nathan. Was that somebody you? Nathan held her gaze. The answer landed without defense. Did you go? Not then. Not then is not the same as no. No, he said. I did not. Rosalie did not ask the rest in front of Eli. Tomorrow, stone ladder. Reuben present. Yes. That evening, June ate stew in Mrs. Bell's kitchen. while Nathan took supper at the stockmen's boarding shed. Rosalie found him afterward on the lodging house porch. Cold had settled over Dodge City. Music from the saloons reached them thinly through the wind. Nathan stood beneath the lamp with his hat in both hands. "Tully's rider saw us," Rosalie said. "Yes. He knows you are preparing to speak. Yes. Are you afraid he will cost you your job?" Nathan's fingers tightened along the brim. "Yes." Rosalie stepped closer. She put 2 fingers around his wrist, where his pulse moved beneath the cuff. He did not turn his hand to hold hers. "Is that why you failed, Martin?" "Partly." "What is the rest?" "A useful doubt, a wrong belief, a choice I dressed as caution." His voice remained steady. "Tomorrow I tell it in order. You could tell me now. I could give you the pieces that make me look least guilty, and the whole belongs before Reuben too. Stone Ladder profited from what I left unsaid." Rosalie kept her fingers at his wrist. His pulse moved fast. Nathan's gaze dropped to her mouth and returned to her eyes. He raised one hand toward her face, then stopped before touching her cheek. The inch between them held desire and refusal in equal measure. Rosalie did not step back. Nathan did. "You should know what I did before you decide whether I am safe to stand near," he said. Rosalie released his wrist. "Before noon tomorrow." Before noon. At dawn on October 15th, they turned the wagon north. June slept against Rosalie's shoulder for half the journey. Nathan drove without asking for conversation. The chipped plate remained wrapped in his camp roll behind the seat. Near midday, Stone Ladder's roofs rose from the grass. Reuben waited outside the ranch office. Nathan handed the reins to Silas, drew his notes from inside his coat, and faced the owner. "I need you and Rosalie inside," he said. "There is a statement I should have made 5 months ago." Reuben opened the office door and stepped aside. Rosalie entered first. Nathan followed with his hat in one hand and the notes from Dodge City folded inside the other. The room held the dry smells of lamp oil, dust, and leather, warmed by noon sun. A scarred desk stood beneath the window. Reuben remained behind it but did not sit. "You said—" "This should have been told 5 months ago," he said. Nathan placed his hat on the desk. 2 days before Martin died. Rosalie took the straight-backed chair nearest the door. "Begin with what you saw, not what Tully later claimed." Nathan kept his hands at his sides. "I saw Martin behind Tully's hide yard near the horse lane. He carried something wrapped in canvas. Black iron showed through one end." "The jaw?" Reuben asked. "I believe so." Rosalie watched Nathan rather than the notes. "Did you see the teeth?" "Part of one side, enough to see the shape. One tooth bent inward." "Was Martin injured?" "There was blood on his sleeve, some on the canvas." "His blood? I don't know. Did he say where it came from?" "No." Nathan drew a breath. He said Tully's men were making false wolf kills. He said they pressed iron into dead cattle, opened the hide beneath the marks, and let scavengers make the wounds look natural. Reuben's hands settled on the desk. "You heard all that?" "Yes." Rosalie rose. Sitting no longer felt possible. Through the office window, June stood beside Reuben's sister near the kitchen steps, sorting dried beans into a shallow bowl. 7 years old, still carrying the name Dodge City had been taught to distrust. "What did Martin ask you to do?" Rosalie said. Nathan met her eyes. "Fetch the sheriff." The answer was plain. That made it worse. "Did you go?" "No." "Why?" "Tully came around the shed before I decided." "That is what happened next. It is not why." Nathan accepted the correction without looking away. "Tully said Martin had stolen 3 sale hides, struck one of his workers, and taken the jaw to hide his own part in the claims. Did you believe him?" I believed either man might be lying. That is not the same as believing both men equally. Nathan's jaw tightened. No. Which man controlled the hunting contract with Stone Ladder? Tully. Which man could cost you your position? Tully. Reuben's face hardened, but Nathan continued before he could speak. Martin said Tully was lying. He asked again for the sheriff. 2 of Tully's men came around the yard. Martin ran toward the horse lane. Toward the old feed drain? Rosalie asked. Yes. Did you follow him? No. Did you see him hide the jaw? No. Did you know where it went? No. I thought he might carry it beyond the culvert, leave it there, or pass it to someone. I did not know. But you knew what he had asked of you. Yes, Rosalie turned to Reuben. What did Nathan tell you? Reuben did not answer at once. Nathan did. I told him Tully accused Martin of stealing property and striking a worker. Reuben's voice came low. You did not tell me Martin accused Tully of false kills. No. You did not tell me, he asked, for law. No. You brought me Tully's accusation and left out Martin's. Yes. Rosalie felt the failure settle into its true shape. Not confusion. Selection. Nathan had chosen which uncertainty served him. 2 days later, she said, Martin died in the horse yard. Yes. Was Tully there? No. Was the jaw involved? Not that I know. Then say what happened. Nathan's voice remained steady. A horse broke loose while men were shifting stock. Martin tried to turn it from the gate. He was thrown against the rail. Rosalie held that boundary. Grief would not be permitted to invent murder merely because murder offered a simpler enemy. Did you correct the accusation after he died? She asked. No. Why? Tully threatened to withdraw every hunter from Stone Ladder. Reuben had calves dying. I told myself Martin might still have been involved. I told myself uncertainty gave me a reason to wait. It gave you cover. Yes, useful cover. Yes. Reuben lowered himself into the chair behind the desk. Useful to this ranch. Nathan nodded. And to me. Stone Ladder kept the contract. I kept my authority. Martin kept the accusation. No one spoke for several breaths. Nathan had stopped a plate halfway across a table so Rosalie could decide whether June ate. The same man had failed to cross a yard when Martin asked for the sheriff. Both truths belonged to him. A simple villain would have been easier to hate. Nathan drew a clean sheet from Reuben's desk. I wrote the order of it on the road. I'll put it down now without leaving out what benefited me. Reuben pushed the ink toward him. Nathan sat and wrote. He recorded the canvas bundle, the black iron, the inward tooth, the blood of unknown source, Martin's accusation, the request for the sheriff, Tully's counterclaim, his own refusal to act, and the version he later carried to Reuben. He wrote that he had no proof Martin stole hides or company iron. He wrote that he did not know where the jaw went. He wrote that Stone Ladder's contract and his own standing benefited from his silence. When he finished, he signed his name. Reuben read the statement and signed beneath it as witness. Nathan turned the paper toward Rosalie. She read every line. Nothing had been softened into a misunderstanding. Nothing had been enlarged into a confession beyond what he knew. What do you want done with it? Nathan asked. Rosalie left the page on the desk. Read it where the accusation was repeated. The stockyard, before the men who paid Tully, before the clerk who posted his notices. Then swear to the original before the justice of the peace. Nathan nodded. I will. Before you know whether I forgive you. Yes, before you know whether there is anything between us worth saving. Pain crossed his face, brief and controlled. Yes, and if Reuben removes your authority, the statement remains true. Rosalie picked up the signed correction by its upper edge. Nathan held out his hand for it, palm open. She placed the page into his grasp without letting her fingers touch his skin. "The truth stays with you until you put it where it should have gone 5 months ago," she said. Nathan closed his hand around the paper. "It will. Do not come to supper tonight." "All right. Do not speak to June about this." "I won't. And do not mistake distance for punishment. I am deciding what your truth costs. Take all the time it costs." Outside, June held up one shriveled bean. "This one doesn't belong with the good ones." Rosalie crouched beside her, then set it apart. "Like the hides?" "Yes, like the hides." Nathan did not come near them. At supper, his chair remained empty. He ate under the lean-to beside the bunkhouse with a tin cup and a piece of bread. June noticed. "Is Mr. Rourke working?" "He is preparing to correct something he should have corrected before." "Did he do bad?" Rosalie folded her napkin beside the plate. "He failed to do good when it mattered." June considered that. "Is that the same?" "Sometimes the hurt is." Hoofbeats entered the yard before the meal ended. A rider remained mounted while Reuben accepted a sealed note. He carried it first to Nathan outside. Nathan broke the seal, read the page once, and handed it to Reuben without argument. Reuben brought it inside and laid it beside Rosalie's plate. Horace Tully's name stood at the bottom. The letter offered Nathan winter trail wages and guaranteed employment. In return, Nathan would state publicly that Rosalie's findings remained uncertain and Martin Gannett's conduct was still in question. Rosalie read it once. Through the window, Nathan stood beneath the yard lantern with his signed correction in one hand. Reuben returned to him, carrying Tully's offer. Nathan held the lower edge over the flame. Reuben caught his wrist before the paper burned. "Do not destroy a man's price for your silence," he said. Nathan lowered the page. "I won't take it." "Then let other men see what he offered." Nathan surrendered the letter. Reuben carried it to the office and locked the original inside the wooden box. Nathan kept the correction buttoned inside his coat. One paper held the truth he owed. The other held the value Tully had placed on keeping it buried. At dawn, Dodge City would learn which one Nathan Rourke was willing to carry. At dawn on October 16th, Nathan rode south with the signed correction buttoned inside his coat. Reuben drove the stone ladder wagon. Rosalie and June sat behind him beneath a wool blanket, while Tully's wage offer remained locked in Reuben's office box until the ranch owner stopped once outside. Dodge City opened the box in Rosalie's presence and placed the original inside his coat. No one spoke of forgiveness on the road. The truth had work to do before it could ask for anything personal. Word had reached the stockyards ahead of them. Amos Pike, Edwin Marsh, Samuel Crow, several cattle owners, yard clerks, and drovers gathered near the low freight platform. Eli stood beyond the rail with his broom held upright in both hands. Across the yard, Horace Tully waited beneath his hide house awning. Nathan dismounted and gave his reins to a stable hand. Reuben offered to hold the correction while Nathan climbed onto the platform. Nathan shook his head. "Private handling is part of how I failed." He stepped onto the boards and unfolded the page. Work continued at the far pens, but the nearest voices faded. 5 months ago, I saw Martin Gannett behind Horace Tully's hide yard carrying a canvas-wrapped iron device shaped like an animal's jaw. Tully left the awning. Nathan continued. One tooth bent inward. Martin had blood on his sleeve and on the canvas. I do not know whose blood it was. He told me Tully's men were manufacturing wolf losses. He asked me to fetch the sheriff. Nathan's fingers held the paper steady. I did not go. The words moved through the yard without applause or outrage. A harder response. Men listened. Horace Tully said Martin had stolen 3 sail hides, struck a worker, and carried away company iron. I had no proof of those claims. I repeated them to Reuben Keating, and withheld Martin's accusation and his request for law. Stone Ladder kept Tully's contract. I kept my authority. Martin kept the blame. Tully crossed half the yard. A hired confession from a man trying to please a widow. Reuben stepped between him and the platform. Let him finish. Nathan read the final lines. I do not know where Martin hid the iron device. I do not know who used it on every animal. I know what Martin asked of me, and I know what I chose not to do. He spoke his name beneath the statement, folded it, and stepped down. Rosalie did not move toward him. Not yet. Reuben drew Tully's wage offer from his coat and handed it to Samuel Crow. Crow read the opening lines, then passed it to Pike. Winter trail wages, Pike said. Guaranteed employment. He looked toward Tully. In exchange for Rourke's, saying Mrs. Gannett's findings remain uncertain and Martin's conduct remains in question. Tully spread one gloved hand. A man may offer work. Rosalie answered from beside the wagon. Then, why did you write the testimony you wanted purchased? His gaze fixed on her. Because you've made grief into a business. I have been paid to examine hides. You offered wages to alter a public statement. The stockyard clerk took Nathan's correction into the office and made 2 copies beneath Crow's eye. One went onto the notice board. Reuben accepted the second. Nathan carried the original to the justice of the peace, with Rosalie and Reuben beside him. The justice read it, asked Nathan to swear that every line reflected his own knowledge, and entered Martin's wage claim on the docket. This is no ruling on fraud, he said, nor on the amount owed. No, Rosalie replied. It keeps the claim from being buried. The justice copied the relevant lines from Tully's offer and returned the original to Reuben. Outside, Reuben faced Nathan beside the hitching rail. You will not lead the North work while I decide whether your judgment can be trusted. Nathan's face remained still. I understand. Silas gives your orders. You draw ordinary wages. Yes, sir. This is not punishment for speaking today. No, it is consequence for what you failed to say 5 months ago. Nathan nodded. That is fair. Pike closed his account book and addressed the men nearest him. 5 disputed claims remain unpaid between my place, Marsh's, and 2 smaller outfits. Winter hunting and hide handling contracts are decided on the 20th. No sound fresh proof by then, no renewal from us, Marsh added, and no payment released. Tully's mouth tightened. The threat was no longer only to his pride. His winter income had acquired a date. Before afternoon ended, new broadsides appeared around the stockyards. They challenged Stone Ladder's handling records, called Rosalie untrained, and warned ranch owners that Tully's hunters would not serve anyone who accepted her inspections. Rosalie read one copy and folded it with her papers. On her way back from the clerk's office, she passed the rear lane behind Tully's north storage building. 2 men stood between stacked salt barrels, their voices carried through the boards. Move the old iron, one said. North room isn't safe now. Where? Doesn't matter. 5 claims won't wait past the meeting. Rosalie kept walking. She did not slow, turn, or give them reason to know they had been heard. The old iron still existed. Tully needed fresh proof before October 20th. Searching the building would only drive the object elsewhere. Better to make him choose the place himself. They reached Stone Ladder after dark. Reuben returned Tully's original offer to the office box and locked it in Rosalie's presence. Nathan's correction original remained with the justice. The public copy remained on the stockyard board. At dawn on October 17th, Reuben stood before the ranch crew and announced Nathan's reduced authority. Silas held the work list. Nathan listened while another man assigned him light east fence repair, work he could finish before noon. His lead drover coat remained on a peg in the tack shed. He wore a plain work coat and carried ordinary tools. One ranch hand smirked. "Careful with those knots, Rourke. Widow may inspect them next." Nathan lifted the coil of wire. "Then I had better make them sound." He did not look toward Rosalie for approval. He rode under Silas's order, repaired the broken stretch, marked one rotted post for replacement, and returned before the dinner bell with the unused staples counted back into the supply tin. Rosalie waited until he had reported to Silas. She found him in the tack shed threading rawhide through a split rein. "The east line holds?" she asked. "For now. One post needs replacing before the ground hardens." Silas gave the order. "Yes, you did not enjoy taking it." Nathan set down the awl. "No, you took it anyway." It was his to give. He did not rise. He did not ask what the public statement had earned. Rosalie stepped closer. "You read the correction before you knew whether I would forgive you. It needed reading whether you did or not. You accepted losing authority. It was not mine to keep without consequence." Rosalie closed the distance and put her arms around him. Nathan went completely still. He waited until her hands met behind his back. Only then did his arms come around her, strong and measured, holding no more than she had offered. Rosalie rested her cheek against the coarse wool of his work coat. "This does not erase Martin," she said. "No, it does not erase what you chose. No, it means I believe the man correcting the lie is real too." Nathan's breath left him unevenly. He did not thank her. He held her until she stepped back, then released her at once. The torn rein lay unfinished on the bench. Rosalie touched the split leather. "Mend that before afternoon work." "I will." She turned toward the door, then stopped. "The calf lost during the difficult birth. Has Reuben buried it?" Nathan's attention sharpened. "Not yet." "Good." Rosalie looked through the open doorway toward the North Range. "Horace Tully needs a fresh wolf loss before the 20th. Nathan rose slowly. "You mean to give him one?" "No." Rosalie faced him. "I mean to give him a dead calf with no marks at all, and witnesses waiting to see who changes that." Before noon on October 17th, the naturally dead calf lay beneath a clean canvas behind Stone Ladder's calving shed. Rosalie removed the covering, while Reuben, Silas, Cal Porter, and Nathan stood where they could see her hands. The calf had been lost during a difficult birth. No punctures marked either shoulder. No blade had opened the hide. No tag had been tied anywhere on the carcass. Rosalie examined the neck, jaw, legs, belly, and both shoulders before writing the condition in plain language. "Read it before you sign," she said. Reuben read first. Silas compared each line with the carcass. Cal took the pencil, paused, and looked toward Rosalie. "What if Tully's men claim the marks were there and we missed them? Then your name beneath a statement you did not inspect will help them," she said. Cal bent over the page again. This time he checked every line before signing. The record named the known cause of death, the absence of shoulder wounds, the date, and every person who had handled the calf. Rosalie made a second copy and placed it inside her paper packet. "Now we put it where Tully can learn enough to become interested," Reuben said. "Not enough to understand why," Rosalie replied. 2 ranch hands carried the wrapped carcass by wagon to the north draw. Silas supervised the placement and returned by the exposed southern road with the drag ropes looped over his saddle. Near the ridge, a lone rider, wearing one of Tully's dark neckerchiefs, appeared against the pale sky. He watched Silas pass, then turned south. The first part of the message had traveled without a spoken word. Cal saddled for Dodge City with money for salt, lamp oil, and harness soap. Rosalie gave him one sentence. Ask whether withdrawn hunters mean stone ladder must leave another north draw wolf loss unpaid. And if they ask what the carcass looks like, say you did not see it. If they ask whether Reuben will restore the contract, say he might reconsider only if convincing proof appears before the meeting on the 20th. Cal shifted his hat. That sounds near enough to a lie. It is bait, Rosalie said. That is why every word must remain narrow. Do not say wolves killed it. Do not say there are marks. Do not promise a contract. Nathan stood near the barn door in his plain work coat. And don't try to sound clever. Cal gave him a sour glance. Wasn't planning to. Good, Silas said. You sound most honest when irritated. Cal rode south. By late afternoon, a stone ladder hand returning from Dodge brought word from Amos Pike. Cal had asked the question loudly at Tully's yard, bought the supplies, and left. Eli later saw one of Tully's riders take the north road at speed. Near dusk, Rosalie and Reuben watched from the ranch windmill as a mounted figure crossed the far rise toward the north draw. He stayed less than half an hour, then rode back toward Dodge City. He checked the place, Reuben said. Which means they have not trusted the message yet, Rosalie answered. Nathan stood several paces behind them. Since Reuben had removed his authority, he did not issue orders. The sheriff needs the full record before anyone waits in that drawer. Reuben turned. You are not giving instructions. No, sir. I am stating what Rosalie's plan requires. Rosalie met Nathan's gaze. He is right. The Ford County Sheriff arrived the next morning with Amos Pike. Rosalie showed him the A, B, and C handling sheets, the charcoal templates, the marked strings, Nathan's correction copy, Tully's wage offer copy, and the signed condition record for the dead calf. The black iron jaw remained only a reported object. No one asked the sheriff to treat it as recovered evidence before it appeared. He read the documents twice. You want me to witness what men may do, he said. Yes, not arrest them for riding onto stone ladder land. No, Reuben added. Tully's hunters entered under the old arrangement. We need the act, not trespass. The sheriff tapped the calf record. What must happen before you signal? Rosalie answered without hesitation. The jaw must be applied. A blade must open the hide beneath the marks. A Tully tag must be attached. Pike frowned. Why wait after the jaw? Because a rigid tool near a carcass could be called comparison. After the knife, still incomplete. And the tag? Then they are creating a payable claim. The sheriff folded the papers. No one moves before your signal, unless a person faces immediate harm. Positions were set before sunset on October 18th. Rosalie and Reuben would wait beneath the south bank. The sheriff and Pike would hold the western cut. Nathan would block the wagon road only after 2 flashes from Rosalie's shuttered lantern. Silas would keep the horses farther east, beyond the route a frightened team might take. Nathan studied the map scratched into the dirt. You will be nearest the carcass. Reuben and I will be nearest, Rosalie said. That was not comfort. It was accuracy. His jaw tightened. If I hear a struggle before the lantern, you hold the road unless someone faces immediate harm. If I see the jaw, you wait. If they press it, you wait. If the blade comes out, you wait. And the tag? 2 flashes. Nathan looked toward the north pasture. Waiting will be the hardest part. That is why I gave it to you. Before they rode out, Rosalie walked to the stock pond to check the lantern shutter. Wind drew narrow lines across the brown water. Nathan followed, but stopped far enough away that she could send him back without embarrassment. "The scout returned to Tully's yard," he said. "Ellie saw him." "Then Tully knows the carcass exists where Cal implied. Or he knows we want him to think so." Rosalie opened and closed the shutter once. "He also knows 5 claims are held and the meeting is in 2 days. If he does nothing, he loses the money anyway. That is why he may risk it, yes." Nathan looked toward the lantern in her hands. "I dislike your position. You are allowed. I am not asking to change it." She looked up. "No, I am asking you to repeat the signal. 2 flashes, open and shut, open and shut. If there is only one, no movement. If the lamp fails, the sheriff acts only for immediate harm. Otherwise, we withdraw before dawn." Nathan drew a slow breath. "I will hold the road. Even if you think I need rescuing, even then. Even if the jaw is in front of you, until your signal." Rosalie stepped closer. He did not reach for her. The restraint was no longer absence. It was effort. She caught the lapel of his coat and rose onto her toes. Her mouth touched his once, brief and certain. Nathan went still. Rosalie drew back. He did not follow. The choice remained hers. She kissed him again. This time, his right hand settled lightly at her waist. Warm through the layers of her dress, holding no tighter than the permission she gave. The kiss deepened only enough to carry what words had not yet earned. When Rosalie stepped away, Nathan released her. "Do not make me regret giving you the road," she said. "I'll do everything in my power not to. Honest. No impossible vow." They returned to the others separately. June remained at the ranch house with Reuben's sister. Full darkness covered the north draw before each watcher took position. Cold climbed through Rosalie's boots and into her skirts. Reuben crouched beside her beneath the south bank. The shuttered lantern rested under her coat, her thumb against the latch. Hours passed. Once, a mounted scout appeared along the ridge, paused, and rode away. No one moved. Near 10:30, wheels creaked over the western track. A wagon entered without lamps. Moonlight caught the small painted mark of Tully's yard on the sideboard. 2 men sat on the bench. Between them, wrapped in canvas, a length of black iron knocked softly against the wood. The wagon rolled deeper into the draw, wheels whispering over dry grass. No lamp burned on the bench. One man climbed down and listened toward the ridges, while the other lifted the canvas-wrapped iron from the wagon bed. Beneath the south bank, Rosalie kept the shuttered lantern under her coat, and her thumb still against the latch. Reuben crouched beside her. Across the draw, Nathan stood somewhere beyond the road, unseen, waiting. The first man laid the bundle beside the dead calf and pulled away the canvas. Moonlight caught a black hinge, 2 curved arms, and 7 iron teeth. The last tooth bent inward. Rosalie had drawn that shape from old leather. Silas had shaped it with his hands. Martin had carried it toward the feed drain. Seeing it now did not make the earlier clues larger. It made them real. The men opened the iron mouth. One rolled the calf enough to expose the shoulder. Together they pressed the teeth into the hide. A dull weight entered flesh and leather. 6 points settled into an arc. The 7th bit inward. They released the pressure. 7 marks remained. Rosalie did not signal. Reuben turned his head toward her, but she kept her eyes on the carcass. The jaw alone could still be called a comparison tool. The second man drew a skinning knife from inside his coat. He slid the blade beneath the lowest marks and opened a smooth line. Nathan did not move. Rosalie knew he could see the jaw and the blade. She kept the lantern dark. The first man reached into the wagon box and took out a stiff paper tag stamped with Tully's yard mark. "Get it tied before the hide stiffens," he said. "Keating can argue with the paper." He threaded the tag through the opening. Enough. Rosalie opened the shutter. Light struck the south bank. She closed it, opened it again, then shut it. The Ford County Sheriff rose from the western cut with his revolver lowered but visible. "Stand away from the carcass." Amos Pike came up beside him. Reuben stood with Rosalie. Near the wagon road, Nathan stepped into view and blocked the easiest exit. The man beside the jaw raised both hands. His companion spun toward the wagon. "Leave it," the sheriff ordered. The man ran. Nathan did not draw a gun. He planted himself in the road. The runner snatched a short pry bar from the wagon box and swung at Nathan's head. Nathan turned. The bar missed his skull and struck high across his left shoulder. He staggered one step. He did not leave the road. The man swung again. Nathan caught the wrist with both hands. The rough edge scraped across his right knuckles, opening them. He twisted the bar free and threw it into the grass. One controlled movement drove the man against the wagon wheel and down into the dirt. Nathan held him there by coat and shoulder. No blow followed, no boot. "Stop," he said. The man stopped. The sheriff crossed the draw and bound both prisoners with rawhide. Rosalie stayed beside Reuben until the men were secured. Only then did she approach the black jaw. It lay open in the grass, its teeth exposed. Every part of her training urged her to lift it, measure it, place the inward tooth above the fresh mark. She kept her hands at her sides. "Sheriff," she said, "take possession before anyone examines it." He studied her. "You don't want the first look. I want every witness to see it leave the ground in your hands." He wrapped the handles in the same canvas the men had brought and lifted the jaw before Rosalie, Reuben, Pike, and Nathan. "I have it." Rosalie stepped close enough to see the inward tooth, but did not touch. "Do not press it into any older hide tomorrow. Hold it above the templates." "Why not the leather?" Pike asked. "Because fresh damage cannot be called old evidence." The sheriff nodded. Understood. He carried the jaw to Tully's wagon and placed it beneath the canvas on the rear boards. Then he inventoried the remaining property aloud while Pike held a lantern. One black iron jaw, 7 teeth, last tooth turned inward, 1 canvas wrapping, 3 skinning knives, 2 sacks of curing salt, 1 bundle of stamped bounty tags, 1 packet of blank forms bearing Horace Tully's yard mark. Reuben climbed onto the wheel hub and pointed to the painted symbol on the sideboard. "That mark as well, observed," the sheriff said. He did not call the wagon stolen or owned. He named only what stood before witnesses. One prisoner said nothing. The other claimed they had found the jaw abandoned and borrowed the wagon without Tully's knowledge. Pike looked at the tags. "Borrowed his paper too." The man turned away. Rosalie did not demand a confession. "Their words can be heard in Dodge," she said. "Tonight, we preserve what happened here." The sheriff looked toward the calf. "You waited for the blade and tag. The jaw by itself could be called comparison. The knife and stamped tag show a claim being made." Reuben's face had gone pale. "Does this prove Tully ordered every false loss?" "No. It proves these men used this jaw, these materials, and this marked wagon on a calf recorded without wounds. It does not name the hand behind every older hide." Nathan stood beyond the wagon with his left arm hanging lower than the right. Blood darkened the cloth across his knuckles. Rosalie waited until the sheriff completed the inventory before crossing to him. "Sit. It's a bruise." "That was not my question." He lowered himself to the edge of the drawer. Rosalie poured clean water from Reuben's canteen over the cuts. They were shallow but open. She wrapped his right hand with a strip of clean cloth from the supply box. The shoulder, hard hit. I can move it. Do not prove that. Nathan let the arm rest. Rosalie tied the bandage. You waited. Until your signal you saw the jaw. Yes. The knife, yes. And you held the road. His mouth tightened. It was the promise. The hardest one. Yes. The danger had ended, but its force still lived in her muscles. Nathan lifted his uninjured hand halfway toward her, then stopped and rested it on his knee. May I hold you? The question reached farther than command ever could. Rosalie nodded, briefly. He waited until she stepped close. His right arm came around her waist, despite the wrapped knuckles. His injured left remained loose. Rosalie rested against his chest, without giving up her footing. His heart beat fast beneath the plain work coat. We have the tool, he said. The sheriff has the tool. Yes. Rosalie drew back. Nathan released her at once. Reuben called that the field record was ready. The sheriff tied a strip of white cloth around the calf's hind leg and wrote across it in pencil. North Draw, October 18, witnessed. On a separate sheet, he recorded the wagon's arrival, the jaw application, the blade opening, the tag attachment, the handlers, and each witness. Reuben, Pike, Silas, and Rosalie signed beneath his account. The sheriff added the prisoners' names as handlers and noted that no stone ladder hand had touched the carcass after placement. We don't skin it here, Rosalie said. Not in darkness. Then what? Reuben asked. Load the whole carcass. The hide comes off in Dodge under neutral hands. Silas brought the stone ladder wagon down from the eastern rise. Reuben and 2 ranch hands lifted the calf without cutting it. The signed cloth marker stayed on the hind leg. The carcass rode alone in the rear bed. No jaw, knife, tag bundle, salt, or tully form entered that wagon. Those remained under the sheriff's control in Tully's marked wagon, with the prisoners guarded behind the bench. Nathan tried to mount his bay and failed to raise his left arm without pain. He stopped before pride worsened the injury. Ride in the wagon, Rosalie said. Your horse can follow. He accepted. Silas tied the bay behind them. They left the draw near midnight. The sheriff drove Tully's wagon with Pike alongside. Reuben handled the stone ladder team. Rosalie sat in the rear near Nathan, close enough to watch his bandage, but not touching him. The road south was slow under the weight of carcass, prisoners, and cold. Dodge City appeared before dawn, rail smoke lying low beyond the stock pens. It was near 4:30 when the wagons entered the sheriff's yard. A neutral stockyard skinner, named by Samuel Crow, was brought from his bunk, and told only that the hide must be removed without cutting through the marked shoulder. Rosalie, Pike, Reuben, and the sheriff witnessed. The skinner used his own knife, began well below the wound, and freed the hide in one continuous piece. The sheriff tied a fresh tag through an existing lower edge hole. Decoy, North Draw, October 18. The signed field sheet remained with it. The hide was hung alone inside the sheriff's locked shed. The carcass stayed outside under canvas. A, B, and C were still at Stone Ladder. The North Draw hide had never left its separate curing room. Dawn had begun to pale the eastern sky when Horace Tully entered the yard. His dark coat was buttoned wrong at the throat, as if anger had dressed him faster than reason. He saw the marked wagon, the bound men, Nathan's wrapped hand, the tagged hide, and the sheriff's canvas-covered iron. You planted it, he said. You used a dead calf to manufacture a lie. Rosalie stood beside the locked shed. Then you should want every buyer in Dodge City to see what your men carried. Tully's face hardened. They are not my men. Behind him, cattle owners were already gathering near the loading shed. The captured hunter who had surrendered first turned his head at Tully's words. Fear did not leave his face. It changed shape. The sheriff lifted the canvas-wrapped jaw. At noon, when stone ladders comparison hides arrive, the stockmen may examine what is in my custody. No one touches it but me. Tully looked toward the man he had just disowned. The man looked back. The largest question was no longer whether the iron jaw matched the hides. It was who would carry the blame once. Horace Tully refused to carry any. The man Tully had disowned sat beneath guard near the sheriff's stable wall, staring at the yard mark on the wagon as if it had become a brand on his own skin. Horace Tully remained by the gate, coat still fastened wrong at the throat, insisting that thieves had stolen his wagon, his forms, and an old animal trap he had not seen in months. The Ford County Sheriff refused to argue. At noon, the stockmen may examine what is here, he said. This is not a trial. The jaw remains in my hands. Silas left Dodge shortly after sunrise, carrying Reuben's written instruction inside his coat. He rode a fresh horse and led an empty pack animal north. The comparison could not begin without A, B, and C, and no man in the yard was permitted to pretend they had already arrived. While they waited, Samuel Crow brought a long stockyard table beneath the loading shed. Amos Pike and Edwin Marsh stood with their account books closed. Other cattle owners gathered beyond the rail, not because they trusted Rosalie, but because 5 unpaid claims and the winter contracts had acquired a cost. Nathan remained beside the stone ladder wagon, with his right hand wrapped and his left shoulder held lower beneath his coat. He did not try to direct anyone. Reuben had not restored his authority merely because he had been injured. Tully noticed. Keating put you down with the common hands, Rourke. Nathan's face did not change. He put me where my judgment earned. Tully smiled without warmth. And now you hope a widow lifts you back. Rosalie answered before Nathan could. His position is Reuben's concern. The evidence is mine. The captured hunter raised his head at that. Tully pointed toward him. Ask that thief who took the wagon. The man's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. Rosalie understood the restraint. A frightened man might confess to save himself. A discarded man might confess to wound the one who discarded him. Neither motive made every word true. It only made questions possible. Near noon, hoofbeats entered the yard. Silas rode in on a dark remount with the pack horse behind him. 3 rolled hides were strapped separately across the saddle. Each bore its original paper label. He dismounted stiffly and handed Reuben the written record. Reuben's sister had signed the time the shed opened. 2 stone ladder hands had witnessed the removal of A, B, and C. The north drawer hide remained in the separate curing room. The shed had been relocked. Silas returned the key to Nathan, who passed it directly to Reuben without closing his fingers around it. Consequence still stood between him and command. The sheriff cleared the table. Hide A was unrolled first, then B, then C. The decoy hide came from the sheriff's locked shed with its tag and field records still attached. Rosalie laid the charcoal templates beside their corresponding hides. The marked strings followed. She placed the wooden rule across the table. No jaw touches old leather, she said. We compare the recorded spacing. The sheriff uncovered the black iron. In full daylight it looked less like a monster than a tool made ugly by purpose. Heavy hinge, curved arms, 7 teeth, the final tooth angled inward. Rosalie placed template A flat. Using the string marks, she showed the distance from first point to second, second to third, and onward through the arc. Curing had drawn the hide tighter in places, but the order and relative spacing remained. The sheriff held the jaw above the paper. 6 teeth followed the measured curve. The 7th hovered over the inward mark. Template B gave the same result. Its hide also preserved the smooth blade start below the pressure bruises. Template C carried later tearing across the older pattern, but the string marks still ended at the same turned tooth. Finally, Rosalie laid the fresh decoy template beside the others. No curing distortion, no years of handling. The jaw's 7 teeth matched the witnessed marks in sequence and shape. Pike leaned over the table. Same device? Strongly supported, Rosalie said. Last night this jaw made the decoy marks before witnesses. A, B, and C preserve the same rigid arrangement. Hide B also preserves the same order of pressure, blade opening, and later tearing. Then Tully ordered all of them, one rancher said. No. Rosalie did not soften the refusal. The older hides do not name the hand that held the jaw or the man who gave the order. They support the same method. Last night's act is the one witnessed directly. Tully seized the opening. There, she cannot tie me to a single old claim. Your wagon, tags, forms, salt, and men were tied to the new one, Pike said. Not my men. Tully turned toward the prisoner by the stable wall. He stole from me. The hunter stood despite the deputy's hand, near his shoulder. You called me your hunter when the claims paid. You are a thief. Then I won't carry your part. The sheriff stepped between them. You speak only to what you saw or did, nothing guessed. The hunter swallowed. After Martin Gannett died, Tully sent me and Will Kester to the old feed drain culvert behind the horse lane. When? The sheriff asked. 2 mornings after the accident. We searched before daylight. What were you told to find? Company Iron Martin had hidden. Did you find it the first morning? No. The second, wrapped in canvas beneath broken boards and feed sacks. Did you see the teeth? Yes, 7. Last one bent inward. What did you do with it? Carried it to the north storage room behind Tully's yard. Tully lunged 1 step forward. Liar. The deputies blocked him. The sheriff kept his eyes on the hunter. Did Horace Tully personally see you place it there? He unlocked the room. Did you use that jaw before last night? The man's gaze dropped. Yes. How many times? I don't know. Rosalie spoke before fear could turn uncertainty into a useful number. Then do not invent one, the sheriff continued. Who supplied the wagon last night? Tully. The tags? Tully's office. What instruction did he give? Fresh proof before the meeting. Said, if Pike held those 5 claims, none of us would have winter work. Did you hear him order every earlier false claim? No. Then you do not claim that. No. Eli stood beyond the rail, pale but steady. The sheriff called him forward. What did you witness after Martin Gannett's death? 2 men searched the old feed drain for 2 mornings. The second morning they carried canvas between them. Did you see what was inside? No, sir. Did you see Horace Tully speak to them? Not there. Then that is all. Eli stepped back. His narrow testimony mattered because no one forced it wider. Pike opened his account book. All 5 disputed claims remain unpaid. Marsh followed. My winter contract is withdrawn. Samuel Crow said, any recent proceeds disputed between Tully's yard and the ranch owners will remain held until their accounts are examined. 2 more cattlemen closed their books. Tully's business began collapsing before any deputy touched him. He looked from one owner to the next and saw that denial had not preserved the only thing he valued. Payment. You'll lose calves, he said. Every one of you. Pike answered. Then we'll lose them without paying you to manufacture the carcasses. Tully reached across the table for the packet of stamped forms. The sheriff caught his wrist. Property in custody. Tully tore free and struck him across the mouth. The blow landed hard enough to split the sheriff's lip. Deputies seized Tully before he reached the gate. He fought the restraint, twisting against their hands, and earned the rawhide around his wrists. "Horace Tully," the sheriff said, breath rough, "you are held for assault and interference with property in county custody." No one called it a fraud conviction. He had lost the contracts first. The stockyard clerk brought the notice board from beside the freight office. Martin's old printed accusation still hung there. 3 sale hides and company iron unaccounted for. The same words Rosalie had faced on her first day in Dodge City. The clerk took up a clean sheet. "Mrs. Gannett, what replaces it?" Rosalie stood before the board. 5 months of rumor could have tempted her to turn Martin into a hero without fault. She refused the temptation. "Write this. Martin Gannett was not proved to have stolen hides or company iron. He identified an iron device used to imitate wolf damage. He asked that the matter be taken to law. His final wage claim remains pending." The clerk waited with his pen raised. "Anything more?" "Yes. No praise he did not earn. No shame he did not deserve." The old notice came down. The corrected one went up in its place. No one applauded. A drover stopped to read. Then another man did the same. Martin's name remained on the board. The word thief did not. Silas rolled A, B, and C under Reuben's eye. The sheriff signed a receipt returning the 3 stone ladder hides, their templates, strings, and handling sheets. The decoy hide remained locked in his shed. The jaw stayed under county control. The North Draw hide had never left the ranch. Rosalie checked each transfer before Silas secured the pack horse. When she turned back, Nathan stood near the wagon, pale beneath the bruising, beginning along his left shoulder. His wrapped right hand rested against his coat. Pike and Marsh were waiting to ask her rates. She had work beyond Stone Ladder now, enough, perhaps, to leave. Rosalie crossed the yard and stopped beside Nathan. She reached for his uninjured left hand, turned his palm upward, and placed her own inside it. Her fingers closed first. Only then did his hand fold around hers. Men could see them. That was not why she chose it. "I no longer need Stone Ladder to keep June fed," she said. Nathan's thumb rested against the side of her hand without moving. "That changes the question." "Which question?" "Not whether you have to stay." His voice roughened. "Whether, once you are free to leave, there is any part of your life you would freely ask me to enter." By the morning of October 20th, Rosalie had 3 written offers and no reason to accept the first one. Amos Pike proposed seasonal inspections on his ranch. Lucas Dane, a cattle buyer with a narrow face and a habit of reading every figure twice, wanted her in Dodge 2 days each month. Edwin Marsh offered 1 winter review of every disputed predator claim connected to his herds. Rosalie placed the papers side by side on Reuben Keating's office desk. "Fixed rates," she said. "Travel paid separately. Payment due whether my finding helps the owner, hurts him, or leaves the cause uncertain." Dane frowned. "You expect full payment for no conclusion?" "I expect full payment for an honest examination. Poor records may make certainty impossible. That does not make the work free." Pike rubbed his jaw. "No exclusivity. No man purchases my judgment by purchasing all of my time." Marsh gave a dry laugh. Tully would have hated that sentence. Tully did hate it. He simply used different words. She made each man read his own terms aloud before she signed. Pike accepted 6 scheduled inspections through winter, with additional work only by separate agreement. Dane accepted twice-monthly reviews and travel costs from Stone Ladder to Dodge. Marsh accepted one examination after the first hard freeze. 3 sources of income, none tied to Nathan, none dependent on Reuben's continued approval. When the cattleman left, Reuben placed a 4th paper on the desk. Stone Ladder's offer. Rosalie read it standing. Regular inspection work, a monthly payment stated in figures and words. A cottage near the East Orchard at a fixed rent. Outside clients permitted. June allowed to stay with her. No kitchen service, washing, mending, or work in the main house. Payment unchanged by an adverse finding. "Show me the cottage," she said. Reuben had expected gratitude. Rosalie gave him inspection. The cottage stood beyond the smokehouse, far enough from the bunkhouse for privacy, and near enough to the main buildings that June could reach the kitchen in bad weather. Rosalie tested the front lock. The bolt caught, but did not seat fully. She raised the window. One sash cord had broken. The stovepipe leaned where it entered the wall, and the rear step shifted under her boot. June turned the pump handle and waited. Rust-colored water coughed out before it ran clear. "Repairs before we move in," Rosalie said. Reuben took out his pencil. "List them. Working lock, new sash cord, stovepipe reset and sealed, rear step braced, pump flushed before use. Anything else? The rent begins after the repairs, not before." Reuben added the sentence. Rosalie read every line, then watched him sign beside each change. Only after that did she place her name beneath his. "You do not trust gifts," Reuben said. "I trust terms that remain true after tempers change." "Fair enough, Mrs." Bell's reply arrived that afternoon, by the Dodge freight wagon. She could keep June on school days, when Rosalie's work required an overnight stay in town. The price included a bed, supper, breakfast, and morning care. Nothing else. Rosalie wrote acceptance beneath it and sent the payment for the first planned stay. By October 22nd, the cottage lock had been repaired, the stovepipe reset, and the rear step no longer shifted. Rosalie still did not move in. One piece of business remained in Dodge City. The justice of the peace received her in a small office near the stockyards. Nathan's correction remained filed there. Rosalie presented Martin's original wage chit. The justice examined the crossed figures, the signatures, and the date, then returned it to her hand. "A civil hearing in early November," he said. "I can order production of the entries that bear on this claim." "Which entries?" Rosalie asked. Martin Gannett's wages, the 3 hides charged against him, the salt account, and any notation concerning company irons during the same period. Not the whole ledger. No, only what concerns the claim before me. He wrote the order in plain terms. If Tully's yard keeper refused delivery, the Ford County Sheriff could serve the paper. The sheriff was not authorized to seize every book in the yard. Samuel Crow agreed to hold the disputed proceeds until the hearing. No one declared the wages won. No one called the ledger proof before it appeared. Rosalie folded the wage chit into her packet and slipped it inside her glove. The paper felt different now. Not valuable yet, protected from disappearance. On the return road, June slept against her shoulder beneath a wool blanket. Nathan rode beside the wagon on his bay, left shoulder still stiff beneath his coat and right knuckles wrapped in a clean bandage. He remained on ordinary wages. Silas still gave the orders. Nothing in Rosalie's new contracts altered that. They reached Stone Ladder near sundown. June ran ahead to see whether the cottage stove drew properly. Rosalie stayed beside the wagon while Nathan dismounted. He favored the left arm when lowering the reins. "You should not be riding that far yet," she said. "I can ride. I cannot rope without making a fool of myself. Then do not rope. Silas has already discovered that instruction. His mouth softened. What did the justice decide? Only that the hearing will be held. He ordered specific entries produced. And the wage chit? Back with me. Nathan nodded. He did not ask how much Martin might be owed. He did not ask whether Rosalie's new work meant she would leave. What life do you want? He asked. The question stopped her more completely than a proposal would have. Men had asked where she would live, who would employ her, whether she could manage June, whether grief had made her reckless. No one had asked for the shape of the life itself. Rosalie rested one hand on the wagon rail. Work I can defend. Schooling for June. Money not tied to whether a man approves my conclusion. Martin's name kept truthful, not polished into sainthood and not dragged through mud. Nathan listened without interrupting. I want winter here, she continued. After that, I choose again. And me? There was no demand in it, only risk. Rosalie looked toward the cottage. The repaired lock caught the last light. What are you asking? To court you. He drew a breath, then said the harder words without hiding behind them. I love you. The road dust, the cold, the ache in his shoulder, the ordinary coat beneath his open collar, nothing in him looked arranged for romance. That made the truth more dangerous. I am not asking you to decide forever tonight, he said. I am not asking for marriage before you have seen what I am in ordinary days. Court me through winter. Watch whether I keep my word when no sheriff is waiting and no one is watching from a ridge. Rosalie's throat tightened, but she did not let emotion answer in place of judgment. My contracts remain. Mine. Yes, the cottage remains in my name. Yes. If Reuben restores your authority, you do not speak for me to a buyer, ranch hand, or sheriff. No, you do not enter that cottage without being invited. No, you do not use what you gave June at that table as proof that I owe you a future. Nathan's face altered then, not with injury, but recognition. Never. Rosalie stepped closer. I did not love you because you fed us. His breath caught. I loved you because you never made the plate a chain. The admission left her exposed and upright, both at once. I love you, Nathan. He closed his eyes briefly, as though receiving the words required steadiness. When he opened them, he did not reach for her. May I kiss you? Rosalie put both hands on his shoulders, one lightly because of the bruise. Yes. She closed the final distance herself. His mouth met hers with tenderness first. Then, with the fuller force, both had held back through hunger, evidence, anger, and fear. The kiss deepened without haste. His uninjured hand settled at her waist. The bandaged one rested against her back without pulling. Rosalie rose into him by choice, feeling the strength he kept under command and the longing he did not use to take more. When they parted, their foreheads nearly touched. But Nathan waited for her to decide whether closeness continued. She stayed. Winter, she said. Winter, he agreed. No wedding decision before March. Agreed. And tomorrow is not promised merely because tonight is. Then I'll earn tomorrow when it comes. The cottage door opened behind them. June stood on the step with both hands around a wooden spoon. Aunt Keating says supper's ready. Her eyes moved from Rosalie to Nathan and back again. Is Mr. Rourke eating with us? Rosalie did not answer for all future evenings. She answered only for the one she controlled. Tonight? Yes. Nathan waited. And tomorrow? June asked. Rosalie glanced at him. Tomorrow requires another invitation. Nathan picked up his hat from the wagon seat. Then I'll wait for one, on March 24th, 1883. Nathan knocked on Rosalie's cottage door, though he had been invited to breakfast every Sunday since Christmas. June opened it before Rosalie could reach the latch. "You know we're awake," she said. Nathan removed his hat. "Knowing isn't permission." June considered this with the gravity of a judge, then stepped aside. She was still 7 and had recently learned to braid her own hair, though one side always came loose by noon. "You may enter," she said. Nathan crossed the threshold only after Rosalie nodded. Winter had left a faint stiffness in his left shoulder and pale scars across his right knuckles. Reuben had restored his lead authority in February. After 4 months of Nathan taking orders from Silas, without complaint and reporting mistakes before anyone discovered them, the change had returned a better coat peg and more responsibility. It had not made him wealthy. His boots were newly resoled, his shirt cuff needed mending, and the plain band in his pocket had cost nearly 3 weeks of careful saving. Rosalie did not know about the ring yet. She knew only that he had arrived early to help move 2 hides into the stone ladder workroom, and that he had waited at her door instead of deciding familiarity entitled him to enter. By mid-morning, hide 1 lay flesh-side up beneath the north window. June sat at a smaller table, sorting paper tags into 3 stacks marked stone ladder, pick, and Dane. The first hide came from a heifer found near a creek bank. Rosalie studied the throat, shoulders, and hind quarters, then checked the handling sheet. Tracks had been recorded before the carcass was moved. The wounds varied in depth and spacing. No blade start hid beneath them. "Natural predator loss," she said. Reuben, standing by the door, wrote the conclusion without relief or disappointment. "Approved?" he asked. "Supported." She moved to the second hide. This one had been badly cured. Salt had gathered in folds, and one shoulder had dried against itself. The finder's name was missing. The time between discovery and skinning had not been recorded. June stopped sorting and watched her mother trace the edge without touching it. "Can you tell?" she asked. "Not enough." Rosalie faced Reuben. "No sound conclusion. The curing destroyed too much, and the handling record is incomplete." Then, "Stone ladder pays for nothing," a new hand near the doorway asked. Reuben closed the account book. "Stone ladder pays for Mrs. Gannett's examination." "We do not purchase the answer." He counted both fees into Rosalie's hand, one for the supported claim and one for the refused conclusion. The new hand looked surprised. Rosalie did not. That was why she had signed the contract. She entered the payments in her ledger and gave Reuben a receipt. June moved the stone ladder tags into a neat row. "Papa said wolves don't count the same every time," she said. "He was right about that," Rosalie replied. "But being right once doesn't excuse poor records later." At the cottage after dinner, Rosalie opened the small lockbox beneath her desk. Martin's original wage chit lay inside beside the receipt from the early November hearing. The Justice of the Peace had ordered the relevant entries produced. None supported the charges for 3 missing hides, salt, or company iron. Samuel Crowe had released the held proceeds, and Martin's final wages had been paid. Rosalie had not spent them to buy food or rent. Her own contracts covered those. She kept the money set aside for June's schooling, and kept the papers because truth should remain visible after relief arrived. The corrected notice still hung in Dodge City. The Iron Jaw remained in county custody, while the broader claims proceeded through slower channels. Horace Tully's arrest for assault had not become a magical conviction for every wrong Rosalie suspected. She accepted that. Law moved by what could be proved, not by what grief wished to punish. Nathan waited outside while she closed the lockbox. He had knocked a second time after helping Reuben at the barn. though he had spent half the winter repairing the cottage step, carrying coal and sharing Sunday meals. Rosalie opened the door. "You may come in." June, at Reuben's sister's house, finishing her copybook. Nathan stepped inside and removed his hat. "I thought we might walk." "Where?" "Not far." He led her past the east orchard, where the first soft buds showed on the branches, and stopped near the low rise overlooking Stone Ladder's spring pasture. Calves moved beside their mothers below them. No danger waited. No witness hid behind a bank. Ordinary daylight. Nathan drew the plain band from his pocket. "I bought this from my wages," he said. "Not Reuben's money, not a reward for the north drawer." Rosalie took the ring but did not put it on. "What are you asking?" "Marriage after the autumn cattle season, if you still choose it then." He held her gaze. "Your contracts remain yours. The cottage stays in your name until you decide otherwise. June's schooling does not depend on my rank at Stone Ladder. I will not speak for you to any buyer, owner, sheriff, or clerk, and I will still knock." A smile touched Rosalie's mouth. "Even after marriage, if the door is closed, that may be inconvenient. I have survived worse hardships." She looked down at the band. It was simple and slightly uneven, chosen by a working man who understood that value did not require display. "I choose the engagement," she said. "The wedding waits until after cattle season." "Yes, and if you forget one of those terms, you remind me." "No, I enforce it." Nathan's smile deepened. "That too." Rosalie slid the band onto her finger. He did not kiss her until she stepped closer. Then his lips touched her forehead first, warm beneath the spring wind. The tenderness held no desperation. They had lived through 4 months of ordinary days, through accounts, muddy boots, school lessons, disagreements about stove wood, Nathan's restored authority, Rosalie's travel to Pike's Ranch, and one week when both were too tired to speak kindly until morning. Love had survived the absence of danger. That afternoon, a freight wagon broke an axle 1/2 mile from Stone Ladder's south gate. The driver was a young widower named Cal Porter, did not know, traveling east with his small son and a load of dry goods. Silas and Nathan rode out with tools. Rosalie and June followed in the light wagon carrying blankets, coffee, bread, and beef. The stranded boy stood beside the damaged wheel with dust on his face and hunger fixed on Nathan's chipped blue enamel plate. Nathan had brought it wrapped in his camp roll with the noon food. The white break along the rim remained visible. June saw the boy watching. She looked at Rosalie, then at Nathan. "We have more than we need," she said. "You decide." Nathan crouched to the widower's height rather than speaking over him. "May the boy eat while we work." The father's shoulders lowered. "Yes, thank you." Nathan filled the chipped plate and handed it to the child. Then he took a second plate for himself. No one had to give up a meal, so kindness could appear noble. The boy ate beneath the wagon while Silas braced the axle and Nathan fitted a temporary repair. June knelt nearby and drew numbers in the dirt with a stick. "That is 7, she told him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The boy copied it crookedly. By late afternoon, the wagon could reach Stone Ladder for a proper repair. The widower washed the blue plate at the pump and returned it to Nathan with both hands. Nathan dried it and tucked it under his arm. Rosalie stood beside him while the freight wagon rolled toward the ranch buildings. Hidden by her skirt, she slipped her fingers into his hand. Nathan turned his palm upward, their fingers intertwined. He kissed her temple, and Rosalie leaned into him before he could ask. Below them, June's figure 7 remained in the road dust until the wagon wheels passed over it. The chipped plate rested under Nathan's arm. The plain band rested on Rosalie's hand. Neither was a chain.